Hi there, this is Jody Holmes again, coming to you with the third and final session for our three-part poultry series. And so tonight we're going to be focusing in on layers and ducks. Our previous two sessions talked about preparing for chicks and raising chicks. So if you missed those, go back to find the videos in Bomgaars' Facebook video library, and you can watch those. But tonight we are going to focus in on moving the chicks from the brooder to the coop. We'll talk about adult layer feed options, and then we'll go into some more specifics about ducks. So jumping right in, moving the chicks from the brooder to the coop. You really don't want to do this until they are fully feathered. They cannot maintain their own body temperature until they are fully feathered. So if you're still getting some cold spring nights and you're not giving them supplemental heat, they may struggle to thrive and become a little bit sick and just need a little bit extra care. So really make sure that they are fully feathered before you move them outdoors. At this point, though, it's great to allow them to run outdoors in free range if you can. The more grains and grasses and insects they're getting from their environment, the more they can get away from each other and not be stressed from maybe some of the hierarchy or the pecking order that comes into play with being in the crowd, the less stress there is. And so they'll be happier, healthier chickens. They are still growing at this point because you're probably going to move them into the coop in late spring. So probably around 6, 7, 8 weeks of age potentially. And so, like I said, they're still young, they're still small, still growing, still need to be on that high nutrition product, like the chick starter feed. And so that will keep up with their growth and development as they gear up and get ready to start laying eggs. Now, chickens are omnivores, so it shouldn't surprise you or worry you if they are eating a little bit of everything, and that may even include some smaller rodents or small amphibians or even some snakes if those are in your environment. So don't be scared, and in fact, that will actually kind of help their overall diet and production. Now, if you're adding chickens to an existing flock, so you already have adult laying hens and they're fully grown, if you just plop in these younger new chickens, you're going to cause a lot of stress. So those larger chickens may decide to bully, be mean, be very aggressive towards those new birds so that they can establish that pecking order. So the best way to do this is to introduce them gradually and slowly. Best way is to put them in the coop or in the same outdoor run that your existing flock is in, but keep them in a segregated area. So like in that picture there, you can see the larger full-grown birds can see the new birds and get close to them, but they can't actually get at them because they're in their own little pen. And so this is a great way to get everybody just familiar and comfortable with each other. And you're going to do this for probably at least a week. And then after that time frame, at night, when your existing flock is roosting in the coop, you can set the new birds on the roost beside them. And then in the morning, they kind of just all wake up together. Now, there's still probably going to be stress that next day when they wake up. So you may want to make sure it's a day that you can be around to potentially get in between any issues. But there'll be a lot less stress than if you just kick those new birds out with the old birds with no acclimation period. Scratch grains can help in this time frame because it acts as a distraction. You're giving those birds treats, and so they'll want to eat those instead of being aggressive towards the new bird. So that might help if you are seeing some of those aggression patterns happening. Now, as far as the housing goes, when you move from the brooder into the coop, this is now going to be where they're going to live for the rest of their lives. And they are obviously still growing, but at the same time, once they are fully grown, they are going to be larger. And so they need more square footage than they did while in the brooder. So you want to allow for approximately 4 square feet per bird in the coop. Now, this would be the minimum, right? So if you have chickens that are going to be inside the coop at all times, this would be the minimum required to keep them spread out enough to where they're still happy and not getting aggressive towards each other. However, if you're running them outside almost all day long and they're only spending time inside the chicken coop while they're sleeping on the roost, then you may actually be able to have a little bit smaller of a chicken coop than 4 square feet because they have all that outdoor space to run in during the day. Now, as far as the roost goes, you need about 2 feet per chicken, and it could be anything. So a lot of your prefabbed chicken coops will come with roosts already built in, but essentially this is just going to be a board or a steady branch or maybe a broomstick or something like that. I will say flatter surfaces are great so that they can actually sit on their feet and cover their feet as they roost. If you have something round where they kind of claw onto and wrap those toes around, in the colder winter months, they may have some frostbite issues on their toes if they're not directly sitting on them and keeping them warm. But you do want this raised or elevated off the base of the coop. Doesn't have to be super high, but they don't like to roost on the floor because their natural instinct is to roost up high and get away from predators. And then you'll need some nesting boxes in the chicken coop, and this is where they'll be laying their eggs. You don't have to worry about having one nesting box per chicken. Typically, they are going to find the best seat in the house, and they will fight over it, and they will share it. But what you'll find is you'll find 3 or 4 eggs in one nesting box, and 3 or 4 in another, and maybe 1 or 2 in a third, if you've got 10 chickens. But what you won't find is 1 egg per nesting box if you have 10 chickens and 10 nesting boxes. So the ratio there is 1 per every 3 to 4 chickens. You will benefit from having bedding down in the base of your chicken coop. So this will work and function just like it did in the brooder. It helps hold in heat inside the coop. It also helps to filter away their feces so they're not walking in it or eating it. And it gives them better traction to walk on so they aren't slipping and falling. It also will definitely require to be cleaned out on a regular basis, especially in like the hot summer sun. So just keep that in mind too. It's easier to clean out a chicken coop with bedding in it than just a solid dirt floor because it's really hard to scrape the feces up off the dirt without essentially digging the bottom of your coop out. You want to make sure that the coop is draft free. So they can tolerate temperatures down into the negative degrees in the winter time, and they can acclimate to the warmer summer heat. But if they have a draft blowing directly across them, especially in the winter time, it will make them uncomfortable, could make them cold. Cold chickens are typically sick chickens. So making sure that it has free flowing air so that it's not stagnant, gross air, but that it's not blowing directly across them is going to be really important. You want to make sure that it is secure against predators. So there's all kinds of predators that like to eat chickens: coyotes, raccoons, possums, your neighbor's dog, hawks, owls, foxes, weasels, and a lot of them are really smart about latches or, doors. And so if you can get something that is secure, that they can't just pop a hook and eye open, that will keep your chickens a little bit safer when they go into the coop at night. Now, chickens will naturally figure out where safety is, and so they will typically start to go into the coop at night on their own. As the sun starts going down, they seek that out for safety. So you really shouldn't have to worry too much about going out collecting your birds as long as they know where the coop is. Adding an adjacent pen is good for turnout. Like I already mentioned, they're going to be happier and less stressed if they have room to roam and more available to eat from their environment. But because of the predators, you want to know that they're going to be safe. And so having a pen that they can be turned out in will reduce the risk of predators getting to them. But it is something that if you're not set up to have a fenced in pen, maybe it's just you are turning them out when you're home so that you can watch for predators, and then you're keeping them in the coop when you're not home. Tarps can be nice for shade if there's no trees to give natural shade in, again, those hot summer months. But the tarps and or wire mesh over top of a fenced in run will help protect them against the predators that fly. And then, like I said, free range birds are going to have a better nutritional profile. And so your eggs should be a little bit better quality than if they were cooped up all the time. So in the summer months, and so at this point, they're probably going to be anywhere from 16 to 24 weeks of age, depending on when they hatched out, when you brought them home. At this point, though, their reproductive system is going to start generating eggs. And so at that point is when you want to switch over to a higher calcium, lower protein layer feed. So they're kind of done growing for the most part. They don't need as much protein as they did when they were chicks. But they need more calcium because those eggshells are going to pull a lot of calcium from their body. And so the layer feeds are going to keep up with their nutritional changes. You will notice that their combs and wattles will start to swell and become a deep red color. That's an indicator that they're going to get ready to start laying eggs. And this is when you want to make sure that you have those nesting boxes ready. So line them with something that's going to be soft and hold the warmth in and protect those eggs. So some of this bedding that you use for the base of the coop would work, straw, grass clippings, all those kind of things, just something soft and warm so that they will protect the eggs. I will recommend that you collect eggs at least once per day. For one, it helps make sure that those eggs are staying fresh and that they're not getting lost or sitting out, but it also helps to prevent them from getting cracked open. Whether they fall out of the nesting box and get cracked open on the floor, or whether curious chickens start pecking at them and crack them open, if they get a taste for that egg, they may decide they like it and they will start cracking open eggs to eat them. And they'll even teach the other hens to do that. And so by collecting eggs on a daily basis, you will limit the risk of creating egg eaters within your flock. It's really hard to break that bad habit. Some people will try, and some people will either pull that bird out and segregate her, and while she's segregated, take her egg away and put in either a nesting egg, so wooden eggs or ceramic eggs, or rocks or ping pong balls, something that looks like an egg. As she pecks at those and gets nothing yummy out, hopefully you'll train her that they aren't good and you can put her back in the flock and she'll leave the eggs alone. Other people will blow out the eggs and let her either eat an empty egg shell and get nothing out of it, or fill it up with like hot sauce and make her not want to eat eggs. But sometimes those tricks work and sometimes they don't. So some people will say that egg eaters are a crock pot offense, and they will call that hen out of their flock so that she's not training other hens to do so. At this point in time, because of the heat outside, good ventilation, plenty of fresh, clean water is very vital to their overall health and productivity. Now, fall and winter months are going to get cold and they will acclimate to colder temperatures. And as I mentioned before, they will be able to acclimate down to like 20 degrees below zero without supplemental heat. So you don't really have to worry about doing anything special for their coop as far as adding in insulation or heat lamps to keep them warm, unless, of course, it gets down below that -20. And at that point, a simple heat lamp like you use with the brooders would help to keep the coop warmer. But making sure that it's weatherized as far as weather stripping around the doors and the windows of the coop will help to keep those drafts, those cold air drafts, from blowing directly across their bodies and help keep them warm. Fresh water is going to be super important because as their water freezes, they can't drink enough from snow or other water sources to stay hydrated. And so you either want to get a heated water to keep that water from freezing, or make sure that you're taking fresh water out to them a couple different times a day to make sure that they always have access. And then a little extra energy coming from scratch grains will help to give them more body heat, and just something to do as bugs have gone dormant through the winter months. So give them something to peck and scratch at and keep them busy. Now, in the fall and winter, because of shorter daylight hours, they will stop or decrease their egg production. So chickens require approximately 15 hours of light in order to produce an egg. So in the midst of winter, when we may only be getting 8-9 hours of solid daylight, they just don't have enough to keep producing. So what you'll see is a bird that may be laying 5 or 6 eggs weekly drops down to 1 or 2, or maybe none at all, depending on the stresses in the environment. And so if you want to keep your birds laying through the winter, you can false light them. And what we recommend is just putting in a light on a timer that'll come on early in the morning, say like 1-2 o'clock in the morning, and give them all those extra hours up front. And then they have a natural sunset at night, so that they naturally will go into the coop as the sun sets. If you have it set to a timer and it's 10 o'clock at night, it's pitch dark out, and they're still roaming around, they can't see well enough to find their roost to get up and roost. And so they'll be stressed, and you'll have to go out and find them and put them on the roost for them in the dark. And so a natural sunset is always going to be best for those birds. Now, the light that you add in order to keep them producing really only needs to be enough that you could read a newspaper by. So we're talking like a 40-watt light bulb or a fluorescent light. If you are adding in a heat lamp for heating purposes, that's probably enough light for them to keep laying as well. And you don't have to have it on a timer. So it's not going to hurt them necessarily to keep light on them all the time if you just turn it on and walk away. It's not going to hurt them. They'll sleep through when they're tired. Not a problem there at all. Now, we'll talk about your different layer feed options, because through those different seasonality and life stages, you may need to feed them differently to get top production value from your birds. So your typical layer feeds are going to look like these. You can see here the Bomgaars stores carry our NatureWise layer pellets and crumbles, and then they have their own Bomgaars label layer pellets and crumbles. All 4 of these products are a basic 16% protein diet, and that's pretty typical for a normal layer feed. Now they come in crumbles and pellets because that's going to change the morsel size. They're both nutritionally the same between the two pellets or crumbles for each brand. So crumbles are going to encourage consumption because they're easier to eat, and that's the size of food morsel that they are used to with the chick starter they were started out on. However, as they peck and as they scratch, they drop a lot of that on the ground, and they'll step on it, grind it into the dirt, and they'll waste a lot of what you're paying for. The pellets, being a slightly larger morsel, as they drop that on the ground, they see it better, and they'll pick up more of what they're dropping and consume more. And so you're wasting less money because more of what you purchase is actually getting into their mouth. And so again, though, we make both because some people prefer pellets over crumbles. Some people will say, oh, my chickens won't eat pellets. Well, if you want to get them on pellets, but they're being a little stubborn, just mix them together so that as they eat the crumbles, they're getting used to the size of the pellets and they'll convert over for you a little bit easier. The layer feeds are designed with high calcium in them so that it supports the shell production on the eggs. But every chicken is going to be different, just like every person is different. And so for a flock of 10, 9 out of 10 of your birds are going to have everything they need from the layer feed by itself. But for that one last bird, she may require more calcium in her diet. And if she doesn't have extra calcium, she's going to potentially lay weaker shelled or shellless eggs that are easier to crack open and eat. And so we do always recommend keeping oyster shell in the coop so that they have a calcium supplement that if they need it, they'll eat it. If they don't need it, they typically won't bother with it. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But these feeds, these layer feeds, should be fed from 4 months of age on. Typically speaking, chickens will start laying eggs anywhere from that 4 to 6 month range, probably closer to 6 months than 4 months. But you want to get ahead of egg production because if you don't switch over to that higher calcium before they actually start laying, then they're going to be playing catch up with the calcium reserves in their body. So to start feeding at 4 months, you're going to build up their calcium reserves and they will lay strong shells on those eggs from the get-go. Now, as I just showed you, there's several options. You're probably wondering, okay, well, if they're all 16% and they all have high calcium, why would I pick NatureWise over Bomgaars? NatureWise costs more. Well, so NatureWise is our premium line and it's going to have some extra bells and whistles added in for production value, as well as health, immune support, digestion, all of that. And so it is our natural line, no artificial preservatives, colors, flavors, antibiotics, chemicals, or hormones. It is a vegetarian diet. And then those added benefits include pre and probiotics for digestion health, organic trace minerals for immune support, marigold extract for skin coloration and yolk coloration, omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids to help with the nutrient profile of the eggs. So the eggs are going to be healthier for us to consume. We're also adding in now essential oils like thyme and oregano, rosemary. And so these things will help improve the egg parents, meaning stronger shells, darker shells, larger eggs, more frequent egg laying. It also improves the palatability of the feed. So you'll see the chickens really go after the feed. We also add in vitamin D3, and that helps the chicken absorb more calcium from their diet. And so it improves the shell strength. And then my favorite is we add in yucca extract, and that reduces the feces odor. So if you are living in town and you have neighbors on all sides of you, this is a great way to improve those neighborly relations because your coop's not going to smell as bad, especially in the hot summer sun. So those are some of the great benefits we add in. I already mentioned more eggs because of it, but we have actually done some feeding trials where the research has proven that with those extra benefits of the NatureWise layer feed, you're actually getting 20% more eggs from your flock as compared to the competitor leading premium brand in the marketplace. And so what that really means is with the same amount of feed, you're getting more eggs. You may even be getting more eggs with less feed being fed because the NatureWise is more digestible. And so you're getting not only 20% more eggs count-wise, but you're also getting larger eggs. And so in our trials, we showed where our feed was producing extra large size eggs as compared to the other leading premium brand only producing grade A large. And so again, if you're selling your eggs, that can be a factor in what you're charging for them and you can make more money, or you can just get, like I said, more bang for your buck for what you're feeding. Now, if you are considering raising your flock organically, we do have the Nature Smart Organic Layer Feed. In the Bomgaars stores, they carry our crumbled form. And again, this takes natural above and beyond. So again, no artificial preservatives, colors, hormones, flavors, antibiotics, or chemicals. But it's also certifying that all ingredients came from certified organic fields, meaning no pesticides or herbicides were used. And so again, this is another one of our premium products. We have those same added benefits of the pre and probiotics, organic trace minerals, marigold extract, omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. However, we're not adding in those essential oils or the vitamin D3 or the yucca extract like we did with NatureWise. So it is organic, may not produce the same elevated results though as the NatureWise line does. Now, molting has a special feed for the season. Molting is a process of losing and regrowing feathers. This is a natural process all chickens go through. Typically, they will skip their first year and they will start their first molt then at about 18 months of age. And then every year after that, they will molt. It's usually triggered early fall by the shorter daylight and the colder temperatures. During this time, chickens will either decrease their egg production or stop egg production altogether because feathers are 85% protein and eggs are high in protein as well. And there's just not enough protein in their diet for the chickens to do both processes at the same time to the same level that they normally do. So we usually recommend NatureWise Feather Fixer for molting season as compared to the normal layer feeds at 16% protein that we already talked about. This Feather Fixer is 18% protein. It's also higher in fat. So what that does is it gives them the nutrients that they need in order to regrow their feathers faster and get back to laying eggs for you sooner. Now this can be fed through molt only, or it could be fed from the onset of molt clear through the cold winter months because higher protein, higher fat, it's going to help them maintain their body temperature a little bit better through those cold months so that they're not so stressed. And we have a lot of people feed this year round, actually, especially if they have show birds. It's going to help those feathers come in sleek and silky, really pretty. And so those show birds do great on it. And while they're not molting, that higher protein is going to go straight towards the egg production. Now, if you have a mixed flock, say you have chickens and ducks or meat birds and layer birds or some turkeys or whatever, we do have some all flock options for you, and these vary a little. So they are designed to be fed to multiple species. You've got the NatureWise all flock pelleted option, and then you have the Bomgaars all flock crumbled option. Big difference there in protein though. So the NatureWise is going to be a 20% protein. So again, if you are feeding this to say turkeys or meat birds and to your layers, that 20% protein is going to keep up with that meat production a little bit better on those larger bodied animals. However, again, that might be a little bit much for some birds like ducks or your layers. And so that might be where you choose the 17% all flock from Bomgaars. But this is a great way, like I said, to have one feed for multiple species on your farm. If you are feeding it to your layers, you definitely want to make sure that you are supplementing with oyster shells. Since this isn't a true layer feed, it doesn't have that increased calcium that's required. Now, speaking of some supplements, we have scratch grains, and this is just whole grains, cracked corn, some oats, some Milo, and it's giving them something to peck at, go after, and it's going to add a little bit of energy to their diet. give them something to do. So really great for fall and winter, especially when those bugs are gone and there's no insects for them to go after. But a lot of people feed this year round just as a treat to their birds. Being that it's a treat, it's not nutritionally balanced with vitamins and minerals like our complete feeds are, though. And so you don't want to overfeed on this because that will be detrimental to your egg production as you'll offset your vitamins and mineral packages. So good rule of thumb, no more than 10% of their diet should be from scratch grains or any treats for that matter. And so if you just broadcast feed it, throw it on the ground, give them something to go after. If they clean it up in 15, 20 minutes, great. If you come back half an hour, 45 minutes later, and there's still a lot on the ground, you're probably overfeeding and you need to cut back. Other supplements include oyster shell, which we've already kind of mentioned. It's a calcium supplement to help with strong shells on the eggs, and grit. And so grit is just going to be small stones to aid in proper digestion. So chickens don't have a true stomach. They have a gizzard. And so the food goes into the gizzard, and that's just a really muscular organ that grinds the feed up into small enough particles to be absorbed through the rest of the digestive system. If they are free ranging, you have a gravel road available to them. You don't need to purchase grit. If you are raising them in a backyard in town and they are just on grass, grit's going to be really important because without grit, they will have trouble digesting larger morsels like whole grains like the scratch grains or insects or seeds that they're eating from the environment. And so the oyster shell and grit can be put in a pan inside the coop. And like I said, if they need it, they'll eat it. If they don't, they won't. It lasts a long time. And so it's not something that you're going to be wasting. But definitely don't mix it in with the feed, because if they're eating it alongside the feed, they're going to fill up faster before they get their nutritional requirements. So separate pan, like I said, within the coop. And it's just a really good cheap insurance policy to make sure that they are digesting properly and that they have nice strong shells on their eggs. Now we're going to move into ducks. We've already kind of talked about brooding ducklings and what to feed ducklings in our previous session. So again, if you have any questions about that, you can go watch those previous videos on Bomgaars' Facebook page. As adults, though, you will start to feed ducks the Country Feed duck product that you see there on the screen. You can feed layer feeds to ducks, especially if you are feeding for egg production and you want that higher calcium. The problem is, though, that ducks require more niacin than chickens do. And so the Country Feeds duck specifically has niacin at guaranteed levels to meet ducks' requirements. And what that's going to do, it's going to help support strong bone growth and development. So really key point there, and really why you want to feed your species separately if you can. It's also capped out at 18% protein. So as I alluded to when we talked about the all flock product, you can feed that to ducks, geese, turkeys, chickens, everything. But what research has shown is if you have too much protein in a duck's diet, it can actually create the problem you see there in the picture called angel wings, where their feathers will actually grow out instead of down alongside the sides of their bodies. And so we've kind of done enough research, and there's been enough research done in the industry to show that 18% protein is the ideal protein level for ducks. And so we just don't want to overdo it there. And then our Country Feeds duck also does include the pre and probiotics to help with digestion. Now with your adult ducks, they can be kept with your chickens. They can even go into the same chicken coop if you want to. Ducks will not roost. They stay on the floor. But they do need to keep their mucous membranes moist. And so they're going to be playing in the water a lot more. So if you have water inside the coop and they're splashing around, it's going to create a more dirty environment, more humid environment. So in all reality, yes, you can keep them together, but probably going to be best if you can separate them out. They can run together outside just fine if they don't want to be around each other. That gives them an option to just not socialize, but then have separate coops that they can go into to better suit their needs. So this is an example of a duck house. As you can see, it's lower to the ground because they don't roost in trees naturally. They don't really want to be up there. So this is going to be lower to the ground. You can see where it includes a little pond for them to swim in and to get their mucous membranes wet. And then an area for them to go sleep at night that can be closed off and continue to protect them from predators. Now, ducks being larger, they just require more space. And so they're going to need approximately 8 square feet of space per duck. And so this, again, is another good reason why you may want to keep them separate from your chickens, just so you don't have to have such a big coop. Nesting boxes, 1 for every 4 to 5 ducks. Again, they're going to share the best nesting space in the duck house. But because they are going to be on the ground, this is where it's going to be important to definitely have plenty of bedding to help keep them warm and give them a soft spot to lay. Most domestic ducks don't fly, so predator protection is going to be necessary as they're not very fast. And so to give them a secure home to go into at night, fenced in runs, that kind of thing is going to be just as important with the ducks as it is with the chickens. So with that, if there's any other questions, you can put those in the comments and we'll address those appropriately. But this is the end of our 3-part series. Hopefully we've been able to answer all of your questions as we've gone through. And as I've mentioned, if there's anything that I didn't address tonight, there's a good chance I addressed it on a previous session. So you can go back to the Bomgaars Facebook page and look in their video library and find those previous sessions to watch at your convenience. If you want more information, you can visit any of our websites to either get more information on our feed or sign up for web blogs so that you can read articles about raising poultry, and you can always like us on Facebook. If you haven't signed up for Plaid Perks, please do so. This is a great way to get some coupons for a discounted product or to earn some apparel or merchandise. So essentially, if you create an account, you take a picture of your receipt every time you buy Nutrena product, and you get points for every $1 you spend on Nutrena, and those points can be redeemed for prizes. So really great program there. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for hanging with us through 3 sessions on raising poultry. So I hope that you will get started off on the right foot, and I wish you nothing but success with your flocks. Thank you.